Hey guys, it's me, the Lit Teacher, and I'm here today as part of my series of videos on debating to talk to you about speaker roles. I'm going to give you an overview, and it's going to be pretty straightforward. I'm going to talk about first speaker, second speaker, third speaker, the very undervalued and underappreciated reply speech, and which speaking role might be for you. So let's get into things. First speaker. So just want to mention at the front of this video, I'm not going to dip really deeply into speech structures in this video. I would like to save that for a separate series on each speaking role. I will touch on structure because structure, as you will learn, is massively important. But really, I'm just kind of trying to give you an overview today on what each speaker has to do in a speech and what their responsibilities are. Okay, so I've already covered in my previous video on how a debate works that essentially what you're trying to do in a debate as a team is advance a case. And your case will be made up of three main points. We call these substantive points. The first thing you need to know about first speaker is that you will be advancing two of these points. That is, 2/3 of the substantive content that your team is going to be bringing forward rests on your shoulders. The reason is that we really want to get all this content out into the debate so that we can have the debate, so that both teams can hear what each team stands for and what they're trying to say. And then this clears the way for second and third to get into that rebuttal and do all that argumentation that a debate is really all about, right? So the first speaker has to do a lot of the heavy lifting and they have to cover a lot of content. What they need to do is they need to outline this case. This is called a split, where you basically say, like, look, this is what our team is going to be arguing today, these 3 points, and I'm going to bring you these two, and our second speaker is going to bring you this one. So it's really clear from the get-go what the team's case is. That's first speaker's responsibility. And if the debate calls for it, you might outline a model as well. I'm going to do a separate video on what a model is and how it works, but essentially certain debate motions require teams to kind of practically tell us what they would actually do and how it will work. That is called a model. And if the debate calls for it, then hey, first speaker, it's your job to get that model up front in your speech as well. Also, myth can be that first speakers don't have to do any rebuttal. That's like second and third speakers' job. Couldn't be further from the truth. If you are first opposition, you've already heard an entire speech from the other team. So, first opposition, you need to do some rebuttal as well. So, sometimes there's a lot to do in that first speech, including rebuttal too. So, yeah, that's first speaker. Second speaker. Okay. The easiest way to think about the second speech is as a 50-50 speech. 50-50 in terms of it's half rebuttal and it's half that third substantive point that your team's bringing up as part of their case, right? So your speech will kind of be roughly split between 50% rebuttal, 50% the substantive point that you've prepared and planned to deliver. Sometimes this ratio changes, sometimes it's more rebuttal, it's less substantive, vice versa, but 50-50 is a really good way to think about it. It's also 50-50 in terms of it's an offense and a defense position. What I mean by this is because half the speech is rebuttal, you're bringing a lot of offense, right? You're bringing a lot of attack argumentation. But you also need to be bringing a lot of defense argumentation. Let's say, for instance, your first speaker didn't get through all their content, or they didn't clarify a model, or they kind of like left some key part out of their speech that's like super important for your team. You have that defensive role at second to do what I call tidy up. So you can kind of say, hey, look, we're just going to clarify our model. It's actually this, or I just want to bring you some information on this point, which, hey, your first speaker was meant to do, but they didn't because like maybe they stayed up playing Minecraft too late and they didn't get enough sleep. I don't know. But second speaker is that cleanup role. So it's super important that you've really across what your first speaker is saying, or at least what they were meant to have said. And second speaker defensively too, kind of offensively as well, can do what we call flagging things, which is essentially where you say, hey, adjudicator, I want you to like take note of this thing. This is often to do with what the other team is doing or not doing. So like, hey, adjudicator, we just want to flag like the other team didn't mention a model and they really needed to do that. And we are very unclear on how this thing would actually work. And we think that you should take note of this and write that down on your notes. You might also point out or flag instances where you think the other team are maybe like, to use a kind of like New Zealand phrase, taking the mickey, where maybe they're like not doing things properly. Maybe they've mischaracterized something your team has said that's just like fundamentally not what you said at all. Or kind of even worse, they've kind of approached the debate from a certain angle which goes against what we call the spirit of the motion or the spirit of the debate. They're not really debating the debate that they're meant to be debating, if that makes sense. They've kind of taken an angle on it which is a little bit unfair, and you might just want to point that out to the adjudicator and say, like, look, we don't think this is the way the debate's meant to be going, and we think the problem is the way the other team has approached it, and we just want to flag that to you as well. So 50-50 rebuttal and substantive, but also 50-50 offense and defense if you're a second speaker. Third speaker, the rockstar position. Full disclosure, my position when I was a school debater, I was a very bad school debater, by the way, but still, third speaker, I have a soft spot for you. You just rebut the hell out of this thing. Your job is rebuttal, rebuttal, rebuttal. Okay? You are not going to be bringing out any new substantive material at third. That is a big no-no. It's really about fairness. If you bring out a whole big brand new point at third, the other team has no time to respond to that. It's not fair. If you do it, or if you debate a team where they do it, the good news is a good adjudicator will just throw that material out of the debate because they'll be like, hey, look, guys, this isn't fair. You can't just launch into all of this new material at third speaker. You're not giving the other team enough time to actually respond and debate what you've just said. That doesn't mean you can't bring new analysis or new examples. So you can take stuff that's come out in the debate already and kind of like offer your spin on it, your take on it, your analysis. You can also kind of bring out new examples to kind of strengthen points that have already come up and illustrate maybe how things would work from your perspective. Third speaker, I know I'm not going to talk about structure in this video, but the way that a third speaker will organize their speech is around what we call points of clash. You'll probably hear this if you watch a lot of debates and you wonder like, oh, what's a point of clash? How does that work? Essentially, these are the points that the teams are like arguing over the most. And third speaker's job to kind of keep their speech organized and clear is to kind of listen, work out what the points are that both teams clashed over the most, and kind of organize their speech around these points of clash. There's usually like 2 to 3 at most. This is to prevent the third speech from becoming like a chaotic mess, which it will probably become anyway, but this kind of keeps it a little bit more organized, a little bit more streamlined. So when I do a video on how a third speech works in detail, I'll talk you through the points of clash structure and how to organize your speech in that respect. Okay, reply speeches, super underappreciated. What is a reply speech? First of all, it's only ever going to be first or second that's going to deliver the speech. It's never going to be third. Think about it. It's a practical reason. If you're third opposition and you've just delivered your speech and then you're doing the leader's reply, there's literally no downtime. You'd pretty much just be carrying on your speech. It's going to be a bad speech. You've got to give that job to first or second. It's actually a kind of rule in debating. It doesn't really matter if you're a first or a second, who does the leader's reply. It's whoever in most instances like wants to do it. It's a shorter speech. You're not going to get interrupted by points of information in a leader's reply. If substantives are 8 minutes, the reply speech will usually be half that length, so 4 minutes. And the distinction that I would make around what a reply speech is it's a summary speech. So it's not a rebuttal speech. You're not going to start like pinging through all those rebuttal points again. Your third speaker will have already done that. You're essentially summarizing like how the debate went down. And by far, the best way to think about this speech is its biased adjudication. And what I mean by this, and what adjudicators mean when they talk about reply speeches as being biased adjudication, is you're trying to do the adjudicator's job for them. You are trying to give the speech that you hope they will give at the end of the debate, explaining why you won. So what you're essentially doing is you're trying to do the adjudicator's job for them from the biased perspective of your team, convince them that you've won the debate, and tell them all the reasons why. You will probably adopt the same points of clash structure as your third speaker, but again, I'll dip into the nuances of this when I do a specific video on how to give a good leader's reply. A really, really good leader's reply will often frame the debate in a very specific way, and it will ask the adjudicator to look at the debate through certain lenses and say, look, if you consider the debate from this perspective, it will be really clear to you why we've won. So that's a kind of more advanced skill that I'll cover as well. But if you watch top tier debating, you'll often see the leader's reply really try to focus the debate on certain aspects and really give the adjudicator a lens through which to see how it all unfolded. So, which speaking position is for you? I'm going to skip right to the end of the slide and say you should just try them all. You are going to be a way better debater if you understand what first does, what second does, what third does. Okay. And you're going to have that kind of Atticus Finch quality of empathy. You're going to understand if you're second what a first does and what your third is going to then do, and you're going to try and do your job a lot better because you know if you stuff up some aspect of it, that's going to cause problems for your third speaker. And maybe because you've debated in third, you understand what that feels like. The better you understand each speaking role, the more complete a debater you're going to be, and more importantly, you're going to be a way better team player as well. But what are some attributes we see in the different speaking positions? Well, certainly first speaker likes to be prepared. They are organized. They are quick at writing and also quick at delivering content. And what the first speaker needs to have is a really good sense of time when they are speaking, because as I've already mentioned, they've got the most content to get through, and failure to get through that content can cause problems in the debate. So they have to be super organized. They have to be across their speech, and they have to be a very complete speaker in terms of covering all of their material within that 8-minute window and not leaving anything kind of out there on the table. Second speaker, you are lucky, I think, because you have the best of both worlds, right? You have half your speech, which is essentially prepared material that you've worked out. This is what I want to say. You also have that kind of like fun adrenaline rush of doing some rebuttal, but not a whole speech of it, as third will have to do. Second speaker needs to work really closely with first to be across what they are going to say, because as I've already mentioned, you may have to do some cleanup. So you're going to have to be really good at listening to not only what the other team is saying, but also like what your own team member has said in their first speech as well. Third speaker, you are the adrenaline junkie. You live on the edge. You like being thrown into situations where you have to adapt and change and work on the fly. And you are probably the best listener because you have to listen the most for the most sustained period across the debate. You are waiting to give your speech. You are listening to everything that's come before you. If you are third opposition, you probably listen to 35, 40 minutes of material. You have to take all that material and crush it down into your 8-minute response. So you have to be a really, really good listener at third, and very, very good at organizing sometimes chaotic debates into a sort of well-structured points of clash style speech. But as I said, the best way to learn is to try. If you have the opportunity through your debating clubs at school, whatever, just give each different speaking role a go, and you'll soon work out where you feel comfortable. And I would also say, like, listen to your coaches. Coaches often have a sixth sense. They know a second from a first, from a third. They can see it. And maybe you really had your heart set on being a first, but your coach is like, no way, you are way too good at rebuttal to be a first. You need to be a third. You should probably listen to them. They probably know what they're talking about, and you'll probably grow into that role and find that is the right one for you. So that's my video on speaker roles. As I said, I'll do some separate videos on the intricacies of each role in detail, but I hope that's given you a good overview. If you like my videos, do the YouTubey stuff, like my videos and subscribe, or like comments, tell me what I should do better, like maybe work on the endings of my videos, which seem to be terrible right now. But yeah, I'd appreciate the feedback, and thank you for your support. Thank you for giving me your time. As we say in New Zealand, ka kite, and I'll see you next time. Thanks heaps.